Happy Valentine's Day, everyone, and welcome to this special episode. We'll be doing something different today. We'll be looking at the idea of love in two unique resources for understanding the Bible, the Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament and the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, abridged in one volume. And we're going to be looking specifically at two words in these resources today. In the Old Testament, we'll be looking at the Hebrew word ahav, and in the New Testament, we'll be looking at the Greek word agapao. So I'm going to go ahead and open up our first resource. I would like to start reading this wonderful article by Jan Bergman, A.O. Haldler, and Gerard Wallace. And this is for the Hebrew word ahav. And this quote that I'm going to share is from page 103. Love is the passionate desire to be intimately united with a person in all of life's relationships, not only inwardly, but also outwardly. Oh, interesting. Not only inwardly, but also outwardly. I'd like to turn now to page 105. The word ahav and its derivatives in the Old Testament have a strikingly pragmatic character. Not only does love presuppose a concrete inner disposition, which is based on experiences and events, but it includes a conscious act in behalf of the person who is loved. So we're starting to get a sense that it's not just a feeling, it moves into the realm of action. I'd like to turn now a little further along to page 106. Love is not passive, but is active in the highest, most passionate degree. And page 107, love and action are two sides of the same coin. So we're getting this active sense as we think of this word ahav, that it's not just a feeling or emotion, but it is action on behalf of someone else. And I like to now root this notion of action on behalf of someone else more broadly with this quote from page 115. Yahweh's love expresses itself in action in behalf of his chosen people. And so we have this sense in which in the Old Testament that individual love is outward focus. It's not just inward. It expresses itself in action. And in terms of the faith of Israel, it is connected with God's love, or as we mentioned, the covenantal name for God, Yahweh's love. As we move further, there's a lot more in this resource about love. I just picked a few quotes to get us thinking a little bit about the nature of love. But as we think about Yahweh's action on behalf of his people, that's a perfect transition into the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, where we see Yahweh's action expressed through the person of his son, Jesus, and as being extended through his people to all the nations of the earth in a much broader, more comprehensive way. And so I'd like to now share a few selections from this article. It's by E. Stauffer. And in this abridged version, I'll be reading today from starting at page 9. God sent his son even to the cross in love. So we think of God's action on behalf of his people. And then let's continue on page 9. A new humanity is the goal of God's loving action. And he uses acts of human love to attain this end. God is the source of these acts. He awakens the faith which comes into action in love. He pours forth the Spirit who frees us for loving activity. Interesting. So there is this sense in which God acts on behalf of his people, but then we start to see that action spilling out into human relationships. Another quote here in that same vein from page 9: love builds up. It builds the work of the future. In it, the power of the new age breaks into the present form of the world. This is why it is always central when linked with faith and hope. Love is the greatest of the three because it alone stretches into the future aeon. So there's this future looking dimension of love that takes us out of just a present experience we have and points us to something larger. And one final quote here from page 9: love of God is the final reality for the fellowship, and abiding in this love is the law of its life. And this quote is kind of interesting because it's connecting love with the journey that people of faith are on together in community. And then the last quote today from the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament from page 10: in a world perishing through eros. And the word here, eros, is one of the Greek words for love. And it's more what we think of in our English context as erotic love, this kind of romantic love, which is kind of interesting to make a connection with that on Valentine's Day. But anyway, I'll start the quote again. In a world perishing through eros and vainly trying to transcend itself by sublimations of eros, the church, being itself totally dependent on the merciful love of God, practices a love that does not desire but gives. I just love that. But wherever you are located and whatever you're experiencing, I just am hoping that in this time, maybe you've gotten a sense that Scripture reminds us that love is bigger than romance, that biblical love begins with God's faithful love towards us, and it invites us to include family and friends and our broader community and even our enemies in our own living out of our expressions of love. And that Valentine's Day can be a reminder to embody faithfully this sacrificial love in our everyday relationships. So thank you again for joining me. And until next time, goodbye.